Ladies and gentlemen, there's a force in this world that's often underestimated. It's the quiet force, the force of stillness, of silence. You see, the world is filled with noise, filled with chaos, filled with people who are eager to provoke. They want to see you react. They want you to unleash that anger, to match their energy, to prove that they have power over you. But here's the thing, they never expected your silence. Silence is often seen as the absence of sound, but in reality it holds a profound power. In a world dominated by noise, distractions, and constant communication, silence becomes a rare and precious commodity. It's easy to believe that being vocal and expressive is the way to exert influence, but true power often lies in what remains unsaid. Silence has the ability to create space for clarity, reflection, and deep understanding. In moments of chaos, it offers an anchor, a reminder that not every situation requires a response. When you choose silence over reaction, you are not surrendering or giving in. Instead, you are asserting control over your emotions and thoughts. In moments where you could lash out in anger, silence acts as a shield. It prevents your emotions from taking the wheel, allowing you to respond from a place of logic and intentionality rather than impulsiveness. This mastery of self is the foundation of true power, one that doesn't need external validation to feel strong. Silence is a reflection of strength because it forces those around you to confront their own vulnerabilities. The ego thrives on attention, on getting a reaction, and when that doesn't happen, it becomes unsettled. When you remain silent, you refuse to feed the ego's need for validation. This disarms others in ways they don't even realize. Their attempts to provoke you are met with nothing, and in that emptiness they are left to question their own actions, their own motives. In a heated argument or confrontation, silence often speaks louder than any words could. Words can be twisted, misinterpreted, or used as ammunition in the fight. But silence, true, intentional silence, has a way of cutting through the noise. It shows others that you are not interested in engaging in their conflict. It forces them to confront the fact that their attempts to engage you in battle are futile. The silence becomes a powerful statement that says, "I will not lower myself to your level." When silence is chosen, it becomes an act of emotional intelligence. It is not about avoidance or indifference, but about recognizing that not all situations require reaction. It's the wisdom to understand that some battles are not worth fighting. By remaining silent, you demonstrate that your peace and emotional equilibrium are more important than engaging in trivial conflicts. You refuse to be drawn into the drama and instead rise above it, refusing to be a pawn in someone else's game. The power of silence also lies in its ability to bring clarity to a situation. Often when we speak in the heat of the moment, we react based on our emotions, which may not accurately reflect the situation at hand. Silence allows us time to step back and gain perspective. It helps us to think before acting, to respond with intention, rather than with automatic reflex. In the stillness, we hear our inner voice, the one that guides us with wisdom, and not the noise of external pressures. In relationships, silence can be just as powerful as words, if not more so. Sometimes the most healing thing you can do for someone isn't to try to fix the situation with advice or solutions, but simply to be present in the quiet. In times of grief, pain, or confusion, silence allows space for emotions to process. It allows for understanding and connection without the need to fill the void with empty words. The silence becomes a shared experience, a silent support that speaks volumes. Finally, silence holds the power to transform. It is in those moments of quiet reflection that we truly understand ourselves, our desires, and our purpose. By embracing silence, we create a space for personal growth, for introspection, and for transformation. It is in the silence that we find the answers to the questions we have been asking, the clarity to move forward, and the strength to continue. In this silence, we become more attuned to our higher self, more connected to our true nature. Emotional mastery is the ability to recognize, understand, and control our emotions rather than allowing them to control us. It is about developing the capacity to respond to situations with intentionality rather than reacting impulsively. In a world that often encourages emotional outbursts and quick reactions, mastering our emotions is a powerful skill. It is not about suppressing emotions, but about acknowledging them, understanding their source, and choosing the most constructive response. By practicing emotional mastery, we can navigate life's challenges with greater clarity and purpose. At the core of emotional mastery is self-awareness. To master our emotions, we first need to understand them. This means becoming attuned to our emotional triggers, the patterns that lead us to feel anger, fear, or frustration. It requires observing our thoughts and reactions without judgment. When we are self-aware, we can catch ourselves in moments of emotional upheaval and choose how to proceed, rather than being swept away by the intensity of the moment. This awareness gives us the power to shape our emotional experience, rather than letting it shape us. Another key component of emotional mastery is the ability to manage stress effectively. Stress is often a major factor that influences our emotional state. When we feel overwhelmed or anxious, our emotions can spiral out of control. However, emotional mastery involves recognizing stress as it arises and taking steps to manage it before it takes hold. This might involve breathing exercises, mindfulness, or simply taking a moment to step back and gain perspective. By developing healthy ways to manage stress, we can prevent it from hijacking our emotional state and maintain a sense of calm. In moments of conflict or adversity, emotional mastery allows us to respond with composure rather than react with anger or defensiveness. It's easy to become caught up in a heated argument, where emotions run high and words are exchanged in frustration. But emotional mastery means taking a pause before reacting, assessing the situation, and choosing the best course of action. It's about maintaining control over our emotional responses so that we don't say or do things in the heat of the moment that we may regret later. In these moments, the ability to stay calm and collected is a powerful tool for resolution. An essential part of emotional mastery is empathy, understanding, and respecting the emotions of others. Mastering your own emotions doesn't just benefit you, it also enhances your ability to connect with others. When we understand how others feel, we can respond in a way that is compassionate and constructive. Emotional mastery involves the ability to step into someone else's shoes, to listen without judgment, and to offer support in ways that are meaningful to them. This emotional intelligence strengthens relationships, fosters trust, and creates deeper connections. Emotional mastery also involves resilience, the ability to bounce back from setbacks. Life is full of challenges, and our emotions are often tested by hardship, disappointment, and failure. Emotional mastery means not allowing ourselves to be defined by these setbacks. Instead of dwelling in negativity or allowing failure to dictate our mood, we learn to pick ourselves up, adapt, and keep moving forward. Resilience is about embracing challenges as opportunities for growth and learning how to maintain emotional balance, even in the face of adversity. A powerful aspect of emotional mastery is the ability to remain positive and optimistic, regardless of external circumstances. It's easy to allow negative emotions to take over when things aren't going well, but emotional mastery involves choosing to focus on the positive, even when it feels difficult. It means reframing negative situations and finding lessons or silver linings in them. This mindset shift not only enhances our emotional well-being, but also strengthens our ability to handle stress, uncertainty, and change with grace. Finally, emotional mastery empowers us to live in alignment with our values. When we are in control of our emotions, we can act in ways that reflect our highest ideals and intentions. Rather than being at the mercy of fleeting feelings or external pressures, we make decisions that are consistent with who we truly are. Emotional mastery gives us the strength to live authentically, to make choices that honor our values, and to navigate life with integrity and confidence. The ego is often seen as the protective layer of our identity, the part of us that seeks validation and recognition from the world around us. It defines how we perceive ourselves and how we believe others perceive us. It can make us feel invincible, capable of achieving great things. Yet, beneath the surface of this inflated sense of self, the ego is deeply vulnerable. It thrives on external validation and fear of being exposed, which makes it fragile. The ego can only survive as long as it receives the recognition, approval, and acknowledgement it craves. One of the key vulnerabilities of the ego is its need for constant validation. When the ego is praised, it feels powerful and strong. But when it is ignored or criticized, it reacts with insecurity, anger, or defensiveness. This dependence on external sources of validation makes the ego fragile because it relies on conditions outside of itself to feel good. The moment the validation stops or is questioned, the ego feels threatened. This vulnerability creates a cycle of dependency on approval and recognition that can never be truly fulfilled. The ego also fears being exposed for what it really is, an illusion. At its core, the ego is a construct, a collection of beliefs, perceptions, and stories we tell ourselves to maintain a sense of identity. It is not an inherent or permanent part of us, but something we build and reinforce over time. When confronted with situations that challenge or dismantle the identity we've constructed, the ego becomes defensive. This defense mechanism can manifest as anger, frustration, or an overwhelming desire to protect its facade. The truth is that the ego is terrified of being seen for what it truly is, a fragile and transient part of the self that needs constant reinforcement. The ego's vulnerability is also evident in its desire to control. It thrives on a sense of power, autonomy, and certainty. When it feels that control is slipping away, it reacts with fear and resistance. The more we try to control our circumstances, our relationships, or even our own emotions, the more fragile the ego becomes. It constantly seeks dominance and order in a world that is inherently unpredictable and chaotic. The vulnerability of the ego becomes apparent when it faces situations that are beyond its control, situations that threaten its sense of power and security. Another aspect of the ego's vulnerability is its attachment to outcomes. The ego often ties its sense of worth and identity to the success or failure of specific outcomes. It becomes obsessed with achieving particular goals or attaining a certain status. When these goals are not achieved, the ego feels wounded, deflated, and inadequate. This attachment to outcomes makes the ego susceptible to disappointment and disillusionment, as it is never fully in control of how things unfold. It relies on external circumstances to shape its sense of self-worth, making it inherently fragile and unpredictable. The ego also feeds on comparison. It defines itself in relation to others, constantly measuring its worth against the accomplishments, possessions, or status of those around it. This comparative mindset amplifies the ego's vulnerability because it is never satisfied. There is always someone with more, someone who seems better or more successful. The more the ego compares itself to others, the more it feels inadequate and threatened. It becomes locked in a cycle of envy, competition, and insecurity. As long as we allow the ego to define our worth through comparison, we remain at the mercy of others' actions and opinions. When the ego is threatened, it can go to great lengths to protect itself, including denial and distortion. It may fabricate stories, justify actions, or refuse to accept any critique. This defensive behavior is a reaction to the vulnerability it feels in the face of perceived threats. The ego cannot tolerate being exposed or humiliated, so it creates defenses to maintain the illusion of control and power. These defenses may manifest as arrogance, stubbornness, or denial, but they all stem from the ego's fear of being seen as weak or fragile. Ultimately, the ego's greatest vulnerability is its inability to find true fulfillment. While it seeks external validation, control, and success, it is never fully satisfied. The ego is always chasing something: approval, recognition, status, or achievement, believing that these things will fill the emptiness within. However, the more it chases, the more it finds that these external rewards are fleeting and temporary. The ego can never truly be fulfilled because its nature is rooted in transience and illusion. This constant longing and dissatisfaction are what make the ego so vulnerable, as it is always searching for something outside itself to complete it. Conflict is a natural part of human interaction, but often it becomes a repetitive cycle that we feel unable to escape. The patterns of conflict we engage in are often learned behaviors rooted in our past experiences and conditioned responses. These patterns are not random. They are the result of deep-seated emotional triggers, beliefs, and fears that have shaped how we react when faced with tension or disagreement. Recognizing these patterns is the first step toward breaking them. If we are to stop the cycle of conflict, we must begin by understanding why we react the way we do and take responsibility for changing those reactions. At the heart of most conflict is a lack of emotional awareness. When we find ourselves in a disagreement, we often react impulsively, driven by emotions like anger, fear, or frustration. These emotions trigger our automatic responses, and before we know it, we are caught up in a pattern of escalation, where each party feeds off the other's intensity. Breaking these patterns requires the ability to pause, to step back from the emotional charge, and to observe the situation with clarity. This pause allows us to create a space between stimulus and response, giving us the opportunity to choose how we react. One of the most powerful ways to break the cycle of conflict is by changing the way we communicate. Communication is the primary vehicle through which conflict escalates. The words we use, the tone of our voice, and our body language all contribute to how a situation unfolds. If we approach a disagreement with a mindset of blame, judgment, or defensiveness, we are more likely to escalate the situation. However, when we choose to communicate with empathy, openness, and a willingness to understand the other person's perspective, we create an environment that fosters resolution instead of conflict. Breaking patterns of conflict requires a shift in how we approach communication, making it less about winning and more about understanding. Another key element in breaking conflict patterns is learning to manage our own emotional triggers. Each of us has certain buttons that can be pushed by others, and when these buttons are pressed, we often react without thinking. These triggers may stem from past experiences, insecurities, or unhealed wounds. However, once we become aware of these triggers, we gain power over them. By acknowledging our emotional vulnerabilities and choosing not to let them dictate our reactions, we can prevent them from driving the conflict. In this way, we begin to break the cycle and take control of the interaction, rather than letting our emotions control us. It is also important to recognize that conflict is often about underlying needs or unmet desires. In many cases, we don't engage in conflict because we inherently dislike the other person, but because we feel that our needs, whether they are emotional, psychological, or practical, are not being met. Breaking patterns of conflict requires us to dig deeper into the true reasons behind the disagreement. Instead of focusing on the surface issue, we must learn to address the underlying needs that are driving our reactions. By doing so, we open the door to solutions that are mutually beneficial, rather than continuing to fight over the symptoms of the issue. Self-reflection plays a crucial role in breaking patterns of conflict. After a conflict arises, it is essential to take a step back and reflect on what happened, why it happened, and how we can handle similar situations differently in the future. Self-reflection helps us identify patterns in our own behavior that contribute to conflict, such as defensiveness, avoidance, or excessive aggression. By being honest with ourselves about how we contribute to the problem, we gain the insight necessary to change our responses. This self-awareness is vital in the process of breaking the cycle, as it empowers us to take responsibility for our actions and make conscious decisions moving forward. Creating an environment that encourages collaboration rather than confrontation is another essential step in breaking patterns of conflict. When conflict arises, it is easy to slip into an adversarial mindset, where both parties become focused on winning the argument. This competitive approach only escalates the conflict and leaves both sides feeling dissatisfied. However, when we approach conflict with the intention of finding a solution that benefits everyone, we shift from a stance of opposition to one of cooperation. By focusing on collaboration rather than confrontation, we break the typical cycle of conflict and pave the way for productive, solution-oriented conversations. Lastly, breaking patterns of conflict involves cultivating patience and tolerance. In the heat of a disagreement, it's easy to become impatient or dismissive of the other person's point of view. However, the more patient we are, the more we create an environment where both sides can express themselves freely without fear of judgment or rejection. Tolerance allows us to accept the other person's emotions and perspectives without feeling threatened by them. By cultivating patience and tolerance, we create the emotional space needed to find common ground and resolve the conflict without resorting to the familiar patterns of escalation. Detachment is often misunderstood as indifference or apathy, but in reality it is a powerful tool for personal growth and emotional freedom. It is the ability to disengage from the emotional turbulence of a situation without losing your sense of self. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring, it means you no longer let your emotions control your actions, thoughts, or decisions. By detaching, you gain the ability to observe a situation clearly, respond with wisdom, and maintain your inner peace, regardless of external circumstances. This power allows you to navigate life's challenges without being swept away by them. The first key to understanding detachment is recognizing the difference between attachment and healthy engagement. Attachment creates dependency on external outcomes, approval, or circumstances for our emotional well-being. It often results in anxiety, frustration, or disappointment when things don't go as expected. In contrast, detachment allows you to remain emotionally balanced, even when things don't unfold as you want them to. It empowers you to engage with the world around you without being overly attached to how things turn out, allowing for greater peace of mind and emotional resilience. Detachment also creates space for clarity and objectivity. When we are emotionally attached to a situation or outcome, our judgment can become clouded by our desires, fears, or biases. Detachment allows us to step back from the emotional charge of the moment, providing the mental clarity needed to assess the situation objectively. This ability to detach from the immediate emotional reaction creates the mental space required to make decisions that are in alignment with our long-term goals and values, rather than simply reacting out of impulse or emotional reactivity. When we practice detachment, we also cultivate the power of non-attachment to others' opinions and judgments. We live in a world that constantly tells us to seek approval and validation from others. Social media, relationships, and even professional environments often reinforce the idea that our worth is dependent on the approval of others. However, detachment frees us from this cycle. By detaching from the need for validation, we reclaim our sense of self-worth, grounded in our own beliefs, actions, and intrinsic value. This power allows us to live authentically without the constant fear of judgment or rejection. The practice of detachment also involves learning how to let go of past grievances and resentments. Holding on to past hurts, grudges, or disappointments keeps us tethered to negative emotions and can prevent us from moving forward. Detachment allows us to release these emotional anchors, freeing ourselves from the heavy burden of the past. It doesn't mean forgetting what happened, but rather choosing not to allow those experiences to dictate our emotional state or our future. Through detachment, we learn to embrace forgiveness, not for others, but for ourselves, so that we can live in the present moment with a lighter heart. Another aspect of detachment is its role in managing expectations. Often we experience frustration and disappointment because reality doesn't align with the expectations we have set. These expectations, whether conscious or subconscious, can create attachment to outcomes that are outside of our control. Detachment allows us to shift from a mindset of this must happen to one of acceptance and flexibility. By releasing rigid expectations, we open ourselves to a broader range of possibilities and experiences, freeing ourselves from the emotional strain that comes with unmet desires. Detachment also empowers us to focus on what we can control and let go of what we cannot. In life, there are countless situations and outcomes that are beyond our influence. Trying to control everything can lead to unnecessary stress, burnout, and frustration. Detachment teaches us to focus on our own actions, responses, and choices while accepting that some things are simply out of our hands. This shift in focus allows us to invest our energy in areas where we can make a positive impact, while peacefully accepting the things that are beyond our control. Finally, detachment provides us with the freedom to experience life without being enslaved by it. We often become so attached to the results of our efforts, the people we care about, or our possessions, that we lose sight of the present moment. Detachment helps us live with a sense of liberation, where we can enjoy life fully without clinging to it. It reminds us that we are not defined by what we have, what we do, or what others think of us. In detachment, we find true freedom, the freedom to exist, to grow, and to experience life as it unfolds without the constant pressure of attachment. Inner strength is the foundation upon which personal growth is built. It is the resilience that allows us to rise above challenges, face adversity with courage, and continue pursuing our goals, even when the path is difficult. Inner strength doesn't come from external circumstances or material success, but from the deep well of determination, self-belief, and perseverance that resides within us. It is developed through consistent effort, self-awareness, and a willingness to confront and learn from life's hardships. When we tap into our inner strength, we unlock the ability to grow in ways we never thought possible. At the core of inner strength lies self-awareness. Understanding who we truly are, our values, strengths, weaknesses, and limitations provides a solid foundation for growth. It is through self-awareness that we begin to understand our reactions, emotions, and thought patterns, which allows us to take control of them rather than being controlled by them. This deep understanding of ourselves also enables us to make more informed decisions and set goals that are aligned with our true purpose, rather than living based on external expectations or pressures. Inner strength also requires the courage to face our fears and step outside of our comfort zones. Personal growth does not happen when we remain in familiar, safe spaces. It requires us to venture into the unknown, to embrace uncertainty, and to take risks. It is only through confronting our fears and pushing ourselves beyond the limits we've set for ourselves that we discover our true potential. Each time we face a fear and come out the other side, we strengthen our resolve and increase our capacity for growth. This process of pushing boundaries is an essential part of cultivating inner strength. Perseverance is another key element of inner strength. The journey of personal growth is rarely linear. There will be setbacks, obstacles, and moments of doubt. It is easy to give up when things get tough, but inner strength is built through perseverance, the willingness to continue moving forward, even when progress feels slow or uncertain. This doesn't mean ignoring challenges or pretending they don't exist. It means having the resilience to keep going, learning from failures, and using them as stepping stones toward greater success. With perseverance, we develop the capacity to overcome any obstacle that comes our way. Self-discipline is essential for harnessing inner strength. While motivation can fluctuate, self-discipline provides the consistency needed for sustained growth. It is the ability to commit to the process, to stay focused on the long-term vision, even when immediate results are not visible. Inner strength is not just about having the motivation to start, but about the discipline to continue, to stay on track, and to hold ourselves accountable. It is this steady and unwavering commitment to our goals, no matter how difficult, that ultimately drives our personal growth and allows us to achieve what we set out to do. Another critical aspect of inner strength is emotional regulation. Life presents us with countless emotional challenges, disappointments, heartbreaks, frustration, and fear. The ability to manage these emotions, to remain composed in the face of adversity, and to avoid letting emotions dictate our actions is a powerful demonstration of inner strength. Emotional regulation doesn't mean suppressing emotions, but rather acknowledging them, understanding their impact, and choosing how to respond in a way that serves our well-being and growth. This mastery over our emotions allows us to move through life's challenges with greater ease and clarity. Inner strength also requires a deep sense of self-compassion. It's easy to be hard on ourselves when we make mistakes or encounter setbacks, but this self-criticism only weakens our inner resolve. Personal growth thrives on the foundation of self-compassion, the ability to treat ourselves with kindness and understanding, even in moments of failure. This compassionate attitude allows us to view challenges as opportunities for learning rather than as reflections of our inadequacies. It creates the space we need to grow, heal, and evolve without being hindered by negative self-talk or perfectionism. Finally, inner strength fuels the pursuit of a meaningful and purposeful life. Personal growth is not simply about accumulating achievements or external success. It is about evolving into the best version of ourselves, aligned with our values and passions. Inner strength gives us the clarity and conviction to live authentically, to make decisions that are in line with our true purpose, and to create a life that is deeply fulfilling. When we cultivate inner strength, we gain the courage to pursue what truly matters, regardless of external obstacles or societal expectations. Through this process, we continue to grow into the person we were always meant to be.